lot of people out and about doing a lot this weekend because it is a long weekend, as you said. So we have a lot of great tips from Forrest here. Mesa Fire Department, you're always so wonderful joining us live here in the morning. So Forrest, we want to get started off with possibly one of the most important ones, which is water safety. We've already had some drownings so far this year. It's always tragic no matter who it is. So what are you encouraging people to keep an eye on?
Well, like you said earlier, we have a lot of people getting back out and about and people hosting house parties and the such, barbecues and all. But what we want people to remember is that now that you've got everybody coming back over to your house, we want everybody to make sure that you're watching your kids around water. And I know we say that every year, but what we want people to remember is that when you have a great deal of distractions, that could also lead to kids going missing while you're out swimming. And it's one of the things we know that the higher risk factors are is when you have a lot of people around the pool and some kids are missed. So what we always say is you always have the ABCs of water safety: adult supervision, barriers, and classes. Classes also includes the C for Coast Guard approved personal flotation devices.
Yeah, definitely. Those are all great tips, and we know drowning can be very silent. You don't always expect to hear that splashing around and things like that. And little ones ages 0 to 4 are at the highest risk there. So what about, I drove past the lake last weekend. There were a lot of people out there. What are your tips for heading out to the lake?
Well, the number one we all know is about impaired boating. You certainly do not want to have a drink of alcohol while you're operating a boat. And you also want to make sure that everybody on that boat is wearing a personal flotation device. And if you're not sure what that means, when you go to a local store, make sure that it's got that Coast Guard approved logo and label on it. And that's great for starters because no matter how strong you are, you could also succumb to drowning while out there in the lakes. And so it's just making sure that everybody's got eyes on each other and that we're doing due diligence to make sure, especially again, that our kids have personal flotation devices on.
All right. Thank you so much for Forrest. Excuse me. We really appreciate you joining us live. So we're going to be here all morning live from the Mesa Fire Department here off of Stapley, and we have a lot more tips for you.
Stay safe out there. Matt, thanks a lot for those details. You know, these scenes were repeated throughout the area. In fact, the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office reports Saguaro Lake and Lake Pleasant had to close due to capacity. For many, Memorial Day is the unofficial kickoff to summer, and here at 12 News, we want you to stay safe while you're having a great time. Team 12's Jen Wall joins us live this morning with some steps to stay safe for the whole family. Hey, Jen.
Hey, good morning to you, Rachel. Yeah, in the last half hour, we talked about water safety, so important all year round, but especially this time of year. And now we're going to move on to heat. You know, I know today it's not going to be too bad, but our meteorologist was just telling us we're going to get up to 110, 111 in the next few days. And, it can even get draining right now outside if you're spending time outdoors all day, even if it's not 110. So Forrest Smith here with Mesa Fire Department. Why don't you go ahead and give us a breakdown on some heat safety tips?
Well, I'll tell you what, most of our viewers right now know, hey, I lived in Arizona for some time. I know it's hot. I get it. And Arizonans, we are inherently dehydrated. That's just a fact. But we have to do due diligence and stand on top of being hydrated. We already know that if you take your body weight and you take that half and divide that in half, that would equal just the basic amount of water you would need to drink each day. So most of us carry around just gallons of water anyway. But the other thing too is we also want to make sure that we're tracking our kids and older family members. And that's really important because we could always say, I already know to drink water, but we have to be really good role models for our kids as watching out for some of the older members of our family to make sure that they're staying hydrated as well.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that because with my little ones, I've learned that when they get whiny, a lot of times it's because they're thirsty and they don't know to say, I need a drink of water. So I've learned just go, hey, you want some water? And then they're back to playing and they're happy. So that's a great
Exactly,
point
yeah. Charlie and Carter, our little ones, we're constantly making sure that they've got their sippy cup of water with them and just doing due diligence and making sure they're constantly drinking and staying away from sugary drinks. As adults, we have to limit how much caffeine we're drinking.
Yeah, absolutely, which can be kind of hard to do at times. We all know. Okay, so what about, you're out, you're having some pool parties, you're drinking some alcohol, some reminders there just as far as staying hydrated?
Well, I tell you what, that's the big thing is that alcohol we know is a really good way of dehydrating yourself. And so what we want to do is just remind people, if you are going to drink, make sure that you're just pacing in a great deal of water as well. And if you're having a pool party, we want to remind everybody, you always have to have that adult supervision. So if we're at a party where there's kids and adults, assign a water watcher and make sure that that lapse in supervision does not happen. So when you mix alcohol with a lot of things, there's of course judgments and error. We also know that can happen, but you also want to make sure that there are people there who are not drinking, who are doing their due diligence to watch kids and other adults in the water.
Yeah, I love that point as well. We know some people also just go as far as hiring lifeguards if they're going to have a party. So, yeah, guys, a lot of heat safety tips for you. We have a lot more coming up this morning. Coming up in the next half an hour, Rachel, we're going to get behind the grill and show some barbecue safety tips for you because I know a lot of people making a lot of tasty treats this weekend.
Oh, definitely. It's hot dogs and hamburgers galore. Thanks so much, Jen, and we appreciate Mesa Fire out there giving us those recommendations around water. All right, for many, Memorial Day is the unofficial kickoff to summer, and here at 12 News, we want you to stay safe while you're out there having a great time. Team 12's Jen Wall joins us live this morning with a few steps to keep the family safe. Good morning, Jen.
Yeah, good morning to you, Rachel. So we have now moved to the other side of the Mesa Fire Department here off of Stapley, and we are talking grilling safety. So I want to bring on Forrest Smith here now with Mesa Fire, and we're going to start with the Traeger here. We know a lot of people are purchasing these kinds of grills, but there are some special safety tips that we need to keep in mind when cooking for the fam or friends this weekend and beyond.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. And not necessarily just for this particular brand, but when you have these pellet-fed ones, just be sure to follow the manufacturer's specification. Because if you don't go through the shutdown phase that they automatically have set in, you can continue to feed pellets, which can continue to ignite, which can lead to a fire. So you just want to be do due diligence in following the instructions when it comes to using these pellet-fed ones.
Awesome. That's great information. I did not even know that. And then moving on now to maybe a more standard grill. So you're using gas and propane and things like that. What are your tips there?
Tell you what, I'm all about charcoal because I like my barbecue. But anyway, if you're going to have to use gas, there's ways that we do around here at the fire department. We actually have these bottles that we keep. We keep soap and water mixtures. And what we do is we'll typically come out, turn it on, and then you just spray the soap along all the fuel lines. And as you're spraying on the fuel lines, you're looking for bubbles. And that will tell you that you have a leak. So one of the things you want to do, especially if you have a barbecue that sits out in the sun, exposed to direct sunlight, that could break down those rubber hoses. So that's something you want to do on a regular basis. You also want to make sure that your propane tanks are also stored out of direct sunlight as well. And one thing that we try to do too is we always want to make sure that we have a clean grill. Like any equipment you may use around the house, it's always best to make sure that you have it cleaned right after you're using it. And that way, by the time you come back to light it up, you don't have grease build up there, which actually can create a flame.
All right. Thank you so much for Forrest for joining us. Wonderful tips there, talking about barbecuing. We know this weekend and then beyond throughout the summer. Rachel, coming up, we're going to go back to those water safety tips because we know drowning, unfortunately, such a big problem here in Arizona, not only this weekend, but year round. So we want to spread those safety tips with you there. Back to you.
All right, we'll be looking forward to those. Thanks a lot, Jen, and good advice there with the barbecue grills. And of course, and for many, Memorial Day is the unofficial start to summer. And here at 12 News, we want you to stay safe while you have a good time. Team 12's Jen Wall is back with us this morning live with Mesa Fire and steps to stay safe all summer long. Good morning, Jen.
Yeah, good morning to you, Rachel. So now we want to move to talking about water safety. Drowning, a huge problem here across Arizona, not just during these long weekends, but all year round. So I want to bring on Forrest Smith now with Mesa Fire Department. So what are your tips for parents, caretakers, anyone really around water this time of year when kids are involved?
Okay, earlier viewers watching saw that we talked about the ABCs of water safety: adult supervision, barriers, classes, as well as certified personal flotation devices. But I want to go back and emphasize the adult supervision part, because many of the drownings we go on as a result of the lapse in adult supervision. Not necessarily that there was no adult around, but it's that lapse. And we've heard people talk about 2 seconds, right? Well, it only takes a couple of seconds. Well, that's what we're talking about right there. It's that lapse. And so we just want people to do that due diligence and making sure that there's always an adult assigned to watching our kids, especially now that we've got folks coming over to swim.
Yeah, absolutely. We know some parties go so far as to hire lifeguards, which can also be fantastic. Plus, kids 0 to 4 are at greatest risk for that drowning. And when it does happen, when those kids slip into the water, it's not always loud. A lot of the times it is silent. So speaking of adult supervision, we want to move to something else now. With temperatures cranking up, more people getting out and about, going back to shopping and things like that.
Right. There's a great sense of feeling of normalcy to get back out in the shop and such. But now that those routines are changing up, if you're taking your kids with you, be sure to take your kids with you. We're not leaving kids behind on purpose, we found. What's happening is that many of us, or many folks out there, may be leaving their kids in their car seat as they're running errands, and they get wrapped up in taking care of those daily chores. And so we just want to remind people, find that technique that you have that reminds you that you have a little one behind you in a car seat.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a great point. Routines are all over the place right now. You know, we're now in summer, kids out of school, maybe some kids going back to daycare as parents are going back to work.
Right.
There's all kinds of things happening. So yes, no leaving kids in hot cars, guys. Let's keep that on top of mind this year, as well as water safety. We have much more tips on our website, 12news.com. You can find it all there. Rachel, back to you.
Jen, thanks so much. Great information all morning long out there with Mesa Fire. We appreciate it. And